place that lets you know you're not the only nerdy true believer who's around. The comic book store, the comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you'll love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, the comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
Hello, welcome back to Source Material Live, keeping the flame strong for Jesse Starcher as he's out there giving out the ends in the OIO. I'm, of course, your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, this week, well, there's an election this week, but aside from that, we're also going to be looking at the Hellstorm show that debuted on Hulu a few weeks ago. So because we're reviewing the Hellstorm TV show, of course, we're taking a look at one of the books that the show drew inspiration from to some degree or another, or at least as far as the character is concerned. So because I like neatly tied up stories, we're looking at a 5-issue limited series called Hellstorm, Son of Satan, Equinox. This first issue, as part of the Max series, cover date was December 2006. In-store was October 18th, 2006. Your writer was Alexander Irvine. Your inker was Klaus Janson. Penciler, Russell Braun. And cover was author Soitum. Sure. Certainly. One of the stooges you just heard is my good friend. He's been joining me on all these shows lately, helping me out. From the Cosmic Treadmill, it's Chris Sheehan. How you doing, sir?
Hey, how are you? I had never heard of, well, I know Klaus Janson, but the writer and penciler of this I'd never heard of before.
Really?
So it was very, very strange to come across folks that I couldn't place no matter how hard I tried. And yes, this is from the Max line, the line of comics for the mature reader. This is so mature that the first word uttered in a Max book was fuck. So
I think I've told you about
we are very mature.
Robert Klein and the first time stand-up was on HBO when they could curse, and
Yes.
he just yells out fuck.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Correct. All right, so tell me about Damien Hellstorm. What do you know, Joe?
He is a character out of the Bronze Age of Marvel, which is unfortunately a blind spot for me. For as far as my Bronze Age knowledge for Marvel goes, it's just the hits. It's X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four. The other stuff, like all the stuff that people really, really love about the Bronze Age, I know very, very little about. Things like the Heroes for Hire and up here Hellstorm, Tomb of Dracula, all that stuff. I've got a lot of it. I've just never actually sat down and read it. So this may actually be the first dedicated Hellstorm, however the frig you say his name, story that I've ever read.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about him. I'm aware of this because Hulu was supposed to do like a journey into horror or something like that we were going to call it, and and it was supposed to be Hellstorm and Ghost Rider, and then they canceled Ghost Rider.
Okay.
And then Hellstorm got left, and they were going to make it part of Huluween, which is what they did. And so I went back and I did a little research, and yeah, he shows up in a lot of different places, but I don't know if he's ever had his own dedicated series.
I believe there was a Son of Satan. It may have been a series, or it may have been like a, Startling Stories featuring Son of Satan.
Right.
It might have been something like that. But and I know I have some of it. I've just never looked at it.
Yeah, when it gets into like the journey into mystery, which I know becomes Thor, you know, but like that sort of thing that Marvel did, Marvel team up, you know, so the sort of general title featuring a variety of different characters, my eyes start to glaze over.
They can be a little overwhelming because, like out here, I'm looking at it right now. Marvel Spotlight on Son of Satan. So there's that. Out here, I hit the like the quarter bins and the 50-cent bins all the time, and when you look at like the comics grading things, people, you have like the very good, the fine, the yada yada yada, with all the grading stuff. I don't pay much attention to that. I just like to read them, and thank goodness that there's something called reader copies, and those are usually tossed into these 50-cent or 25-cent bins, and I'll find whole clumps of like the startling stories and the Marvel Spotlights and the 2-in-1s and the Marvel team-ups. And I'll look at them and it's like, I don't even know where to start. Because I go into the shops with my checklist, the stuff that I'm trying to track down. And then I'll see all these books and I'll be like, oh, I really want this. And I'm thinking, I might already have it. So it's like, I just get overwhelmed with that kind of thing. And I usually just leave it behind.
So this is my first experience with the Damon Hellstrom character. This is the first time I've read Hellstorm. As I said before, this is a 5-issue limited series, and we're at Comic Vine for our synopsis here of issue number 1. Here we go. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the outpouring of human misery has drawn demons, like you do, like sharks to a bloodbath. What better time for the son of Satan to pay a visit? After having a vivid dream of demons tearing apart a hawk, Hellstorm comes to New Orleans to investigate what it means. At a bar, he encounters a doctor who tells him about a woman who went into labor and then vanished from the hospital. The same woman the doctor ran into 2 weeks later, with a child looking 5 years old. After hearing this, Demon believes his dream and the woman are connected. All right, so here is my first thing with this book. He apparently has like hellfire powers and can take out demons with nary a sweat. Pretty much, yeah. They fall to his pitchfork very, very easily. Yeah, and that was kind of my first, just reading this first issue, and and I give things a chance, and this first issue here is a lot of setup, but that was one of the things I noticed is like. Every time he fights a demon, there's no fight really. The demons just die easily. They just line up. Yeah, they line up and wait for their heads to be chopped off. It's I guess it's it's a good group of bad guys if you can get them. But they don't really pose much of a threat. No, there's not a lot of tension there. The tension is in the mystery. Yeah, it's the mystery of what's going on and the I hate you, Dad, I never asked to be born that goes on between the son of Satan and Satan himself. Yeah, you don't watch the Lucifer show, but that's all I could think about. This feels cause like when I read the first issue, I kept thinking, I'm like, is this like a riff on Lucifer or John Constantine? Because it feels like because he's kind of sarcastic, he's kind of like way too powerful, and he's in league with demons, so it's like, It just felt like and again, I have no frame of reference for what happened in the Bronze Age. I know he ran with Ghost Rider for a little bit, or he was at least around with Ghost Rider a bit, so I really can't speak to whether or not that was something that was always part of his character, or if that might be something that that Marvel thought it might be convenient to lift from the distinguished competition. So any thoughts about Equinox Part 1? Part 1, well, we mentioned that there's an election this week, so and I think people are very, very politically motivated at the moment. I feel like we're very energized, but still very uninformed. But we see this is after Hurricane Katrina, and shockingly, for a book with Axel Alonso in the editor's seat, it doesn't get political. I was very surprised. No, they just sort of said this is the setting. This is a miserable place, condemned with poverty, and this is the kind of place that demons like to prey on. And they left it at that, which I thought was really nice. Absolutely, because that definitely does not feel like current year Marvel, which
is telling, because this wasn't that long ago. It's only 14 years ago. But yeah, this was I thought it was pretty neat. The scene in the bar with the doctor, conversation was a little bit forced, but I mean, it got us to where we were gonna be. It facilitated the plot. It let it go forward. Yeah, decent enough first issue. A fair amount of decompression here, but that's just what's gonna happen.
Issue number 2. For Damon Hellstorm, this means one thing. It's hunting season. Like Sun Tzu said, some battles can be won without firing a single arrow. All you need to do is sow chaos. And who better than to do that than the son of Satan? All right, so I think it's issue number 2 where he figures out that the woman who gave birth is Isis. And her son, the boy, is Horus.
Yeah.
And they're on a mission. They're on a mission to raise the dead. Her dead husband, what's his face?
Osiris. Her brother husband, yeah.
Yeah. Osiris is rendered into a number of different pieces. She's got all but the one piece. She's missing
What piece is that?
Missing the penis. Poor man. He had his penis ripped off, like you do.
He did, yeah.
So I think by issue number 2, they've set up the fact that Satan is watching, and he has an interest in Osiris being resurrected, but there was something about him wanting to control it, and then you have Isis. She wants him back for her own reasons, and Damon Hellstorm is sort of caught in the middle to where he doesn't want to do his father's bidding. Hello, Lucifer. And he doesn't want to necessarily do what Isis wants, but he sees the need for this to happen. This made my head hurt.
A bit, yeah. It's like he's playing both angles, but he doesn't want either. It's very, very weird.
Yes.
And I didn't realize. It's like, dude, just walk away then. Just leave. But every time his father
I think he got threatened, didn't he? Like if he didn't help, Horus was going to kick his ass.
But it's like this dude's taking down demons with like a snap of his fingers. I mean, what's a bird gonna do, right? I guess he is a god, but or sorta, right? I guess Horus is sort of a god. But every time his father would call him, it would play a different ringtone on his cell phone. It would be like the first one was like "Sympathy for the Devil," right?
Right. Yeah, which I laughed at.
And I think the second one was like the devil went down to Georgia, and Damon picks up the phone and he's like, "You know, you lost that one, right?" And he's like, I thought that was kind of cute. But it's funny because we keep seeing like Satan watching, and you're from the Northeast, so you're probably familiar with Newmark and Lewis.
Oh yeah.
So every time I saw him, the first thing that went through my mind is Dick Lewis is watching. and like I remember those billboards with like Dick Lewis's eyes, and it said Dick Lewis is watching every friggin' time. You just couldn't escape it.
Anything else on issue number 2 before we move on?
No, it was just more setup. We did establish that the whole, I don't even know what sort of godhood is this Egyptian gods?
Yes.
So yeah, we established that that's what we're dealing with here. Made me think that we were reading some Shazam comic for a bit, but we talked about Osiris, Horus, and Isis, and we're pretty much setting the table to move forward. It's the pacing here, while decompressed, isn't quite as egregiously decompressed as a lot of stories of the vintage.
Well, issue 3 is where things really get cooking.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
Demons have descended on New Orleans, harvesting body parts in a furious race to reassemble a being of unlimited power. Demon Hellstorm has got only one option to thwart the demon's plot. Locate just the one key piece. Mm-hmm. Demons have descended on New Orleans. Let's try that again. A being whose resurrection is too terrible to contemplate. Damon Hellstorm has got only one option to thwart the demon's plot. Locates just the one piece. One key body part without which the entity can never ever be whole. And make sure no one finds it. Just how far is Damon ready to go? Find out. He's not called the son of Satan for nothing. All right.
It's true.
Hellstorm searches for Osiris's penis. He comes into conflict with some of his father's minions and is led into the underworld. He is judged by Anubis and Thoth, and upon getting the penis he is looking for, he is swallowed by Amatu, which is like a giant alligator.
Yes. Yeah, and he's taken to where does it take him? It takes him to like the Netherworld or something, or
yeah, he goes to the underworld.
yeah.
He finds this house, and this house I think was in his dreams. And in the house is demons, and he kills all the demons, and he goes into the basement, and the basement is a portal to the underworld. And
to the River Styx, yeah.
Yeah, and he gets in the boat, and he takes, and he goes, and he is confronted by the Egyptian gods, and they're like, if your heart is lighter than a feather...
It was your soul. They said
Yeah,
ask for his soul, but he said he preferred to give his heart. Yeah.
So if your soul was lighter than a feather, then you would be judged to be good, and you'll be allowed to go on your way. If not, then I guess you're condemned to hell or whatever.
Yeah.
And it turns out his soul is equal to that of a feather.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got the piece, but I think the issue ends with him being eaten by the alligator, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I thought this was an interesting issue.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely weird. This isn't. I talk about this a lot, referencing Doom Patrol, the television show, where it's like, oh, now we get to the punchy parts. There wasn't a lot of punchy parts in this one, but it was a fascinating story, and I thought, for a 5-issue limited series, it kind of kept things moving. What'd you think?
Yeah, the same. I thought it was good. I liked. I was afraid that this whole story was going to take place like where he's just beaming back and forth from hell to and back to the Earth setting. So I was happy that it was all kind of condensed here, and I also like that there's like this familiarity between him and the judges and whatnot. So I thought that was pretty cool. I kind of got lost when the alligator ate him because. Like, we just see him, like, floating in blackness then.
Mm-hmm.
After that. It's like, is he in, like, a deeper version of the underworld? Or is he in, like, the netherworld now? Because it felt very, very disjointed towards the end there when he got snapped up.
Yeah, there's an image of him holding the vase that I guess has the penis in it. And he looks very at peace.
Yeah.
And he's just swallowed whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's, like, knelt down, and then the thing just snaps him up.
Yep. All right, issue number 4. With otherworldly figures breathing down his neck, the key to Damon Hellstorm's survival sits shriveled in a little glass jar, waiting to be reunited with its host. All the son of Satan needs is needle and thread and to take the biggest gamble of his life. God help us if he rolls craps. Ah, yes, this is the issue where they spend a lot of time, like more than you could possibly think on this. Sewing a dick to a body.
Yeah. Yeah, needle and thread, literally. He's sewing it to poor old Osiris.
There was a lot of sewing in this issue.
No doubt. No doubt. It was like almost all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of sewing there. And thankfully, they the way they, I guess the way they shot this, we didn't get to see like every single cross stitch, so that was good. Because you never know what they're going to do with these Max books to show how mature they are. Mm-hmm. I think we get to see like the head once, but then it's just being sewed on. But no, I thought it was pretty cool. I liked that Damon was like talking to him as he was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Now, is this the issue where he finally, once he sews the dick on, Osiris is resurrected and he kills him almost instantly?
Yeah, he slices his throat right then. Yeah, because
right.
this is issue 4, so I think it ends with Horus and Isis arriving at that house.
Mm-hmm.
And like the father, Osiris sits up, and Damon walks up behind him and right across the throat.
Yes, thus pissing off Isis to say the least.
Yeah, a little bit.
And Satan, from what neither one, they both they both somehow benefited from his resurrection.
Yes.
And Damon Hellstorm went through the trouble of resurrecting him just to kill him again.
Just to kill him.
And did you get a sense as to what that was supposed to accomplish?
Absolutely none.
Okay.
I know why Isis wanted him back, because she loves him, and she, that's her brother husband. I don't know what Satan had in mind for him. Unless, because Damon did posit either, I think it was a little bit earlier than this, because I think Isis even asked, what stakes are in this for Satan? What's his goal? And Damon's just like, well, he just wants chaos, and this will bring chaos, so that'll make him happy. Seems kind of a reach, and it seems like a really convoluted way of. I mean, he's Satan. He could do whatever the hell he wants. He can make things chaotic in any way he sees fit. Like, why go to all the trouble here? It seems weird.
It does. Anything else about issue number 4?
No, it was another good one. The pacing, I mean, like I said, there is decompression here, but it's not like an Avengers issue of this vintage where it's like, okay, we're gonna have Chinese food and we're gonna sit and talk for 22 pages and it's just gonna be heads. This is it's moving. I think it's moving at just the right pace. And for this being a Max book and for us dealing with body parts and members, surprisingly light on the cursing and the extreme violence.
Yeah,
there's not much gore here. I mean, there's decapitations, but that's in any comic. And the cursing is kept to just when it's really necessary, I guess. So that was surprising because anytime I come across a Max book, it's like, okay, let's be ready to. It's going to be 9th grade gym class right now, and we'll see everybody get away with everything they think they can get away with. But they showed real restraint here, which was a surprise, a pleasant surprise.
All right, so we are up to issue number 5. It all comes down to this: your kiss, trapped between hell and a hot place. Damon Hellstorm unveils his trap and teaches his old man a thing or two in the process. All right, so I have the issue up right now. Okay, yeah, he's sitting there with the slit, with his throat slit, and they're talking about Macbeth, which I think is kind of funny. So yeah, Isis and Horus walk in there, and she's like, "You've got worse problems right now."
And then the demons show up, but Isis doesn't want the demons to kill Hellstrom. She wants to do it. She wants the honor of doing it.
Yeah, we have our final face off here, and it's demons versus Horus and Hellstorm.
It's a triple threat match.
Yep. So now we're up to the punchy part. This is a lot of fighting. Yes. There's a lot of fighting going on here for several pages. Oh, and then even better, just to add to the mix, is a bunch of giant scorpions.
Yeah, she brings in the bugs, and then the bugs are talking, and the bugs have filthy mouths. I'll give them that much. The insects do have filthy mouths, but I guess if you're a bug, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it got pretty chaotic here, and by this point I'd already forgotten that he was eaten by an alligator, so I didn't realize. I still don't realize what that meant, but I mean, we built to this whole big scene here where we get revisited by this alligator, right?
Yeah. Amatu shows up again, and I'm not sure what he does here. He just there's a scene.
He just descends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, he feeds the dead Osiris to the alligator.
Yes. Not all of him, though.
Okay. The god who dies is a Hallmark card. If Hallmark cards actually healed the wounds or betrayal or loss or grief, you'd only need to get one once. But they don't. And neither does the god who dies. So the story can't be told only once. It has to go on over and over. Love is the armor Isis wears against reality. Sometimes it isn't good enough. Still, she'll try again. That's faith. The old man hates faith, so he wanted Osiris' story to end. When the story is over, you don't have to have faith anymore because you know. And this goes on and on and on.
It does for quite a while here, and it's like if this is we are talking about a faith here, and I guess part of this Osiris and Isis thing is resurrection, and so how can Satan win this? How can he take away the idea that one day, somewhere, a millennia from now, however long from now, Osiris will come back?
So a few panels later, the alligator vomits out Hellstorm and Osiris. One of these days, like that little kid with the caterpillar, Isis might learn the seduction of lost faith. Then her story might end. But it's not an ending I'd want to see. That's for the gods' business. For us topsiders, sometimes I think the lesson here is you can get drawn and quartered by allegiance, or you can die, or you can abjure loyalty and die alone. Some choice. We tell ourselves to convince ourselves we'll never have to make it. We tell them over and over, and so there's a panel of her just kind of walking away from all of this.
Yeah.
And we sort of flash forward, and
We get an epilogue, yeah.
Yeah, Damon is in the street, and he's got the penis is what he's got here.
He's got the urn, yeah. He's got the dick in a box, yeah.
And so he goes to like a bank. He's going to put it in a thing, and he's going to lose the key.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that.
That's it.
That's the end of the story. All right. So what do you think overall?
I liked it. I thought it was okay. I didn't know what to expect here. Have you seen the show yet?
Yes, I did watch the show.
Is it based on this story?
No.
I didn't think so. Yeah, I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right. Didn't know what to expect going into it. I was expecting, just to be like, okay, this feels like a very turn-of-the-century Vertigo story, but it does feel like a turn-of-the-century Vertigo story in a good way. Thought it was okay. Thought the pacing was good. The art, it wasn't the greatest, but it worked when it needed to.
Yeah, I thought it was good comic book art.
Sure. And I'm looking here because I'm trying to figure out who this Alex Irvine is, and I'm looking him up, and he is a science fiction writer who has very, very few comics credits. This looks like it might have been his very first comic story, and if that's truly the case, then hey, that's not a bad first outing.
Yeah, I think as a trade, as a 5-issue limited series, it was a fun, breezy read.
Yeah.
There's a lot of narration, and the motives are not totally clear at times, but I think overall, I followed the story well enough to where, when it was over, I was like, okay, that was fine. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads.
Okay. Out of how many?
5.
Okay, yeah, I think that's very fair. That's very fair. Yeah, because it's not going to rock your socks, and it's also not going to piss you off. Which, that's 90% of comics, right? And it's right there in that. I'm trying to think of a comics equivalent to the Mendoza line. What's just? I don't know. What's like a very middling sort of thing? Can't think of one off the top of my head. I know. Yeah, I don't even know. I'll piss a lot of people off if I say somebody that people like, but it's in that belt of decent comics.
Yeah, and I think me and you, as we've been doing these, we've sort of hit a run of it's fine.
Yeah. And as internet reviewers, I think we are unique in that regard, because if you're an internet comic book reviewer, it's either 0 stars out of 10 or 10 stars out of 10. So when we come in with it was an okay review, it's probably dismissed by most people, but at the same time, it's honest. And I would say average is average for a reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say most comics probably travel in the 3 out of 5 star range.
Absolutely. I think I think most comics. When I used to review comics for sites that would do number scores, like the out of 10. Generally, I would start at a 7, and then I would read the comic, and I would inch up or inch down. That was my methodology to reviewing here, because if you go to the Circle Jerk sites, it's 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, please
everything
retweet.
can't be 10 out of 10. Not everything is Kingdom Come or The Long Halloween.
Exactly. And I was asking people, and it was me just being a shit disturber. I said, okay, let's say you have a shelf in your library. You have this one bookshelf, and it's your 10 out of 10 bookshelf. You know, what's on that shelf? It can't be everything.
Yeah.
You know, it can't be Watchmen, and it can't be Watchmen and V for Vendetta and Squirrel Girl #8. You know, it just can't be. You got to be choosy here. So I think us realizing that these are, you know, I don't think a comic book creator wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to write a shitty story today. And that's what we get here. We get a decent story. It was a fun read. It passed the time. I learned a little bit about this character. I wish it was a little bit more superheroic-y, but it is a Max book, and Max books are usually a little too cool for that. We know what we're getting into when we go into it, so I can't really hold it against it. But it was a fine story. It was a fine story, and I wouldn't mind reading more about this guy.
All right. I couldn't have said it better myself. So that brings us to a close. Next week is one of your picks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Starman, Volume 1, Sins of the Father. Oh,
boy. If you folks haven't read the James Robinson Starman, and I mean, it's almost a cliche, but people like, you know, what are your favorite, you know, that's my 10 out of 10 shelf right there. There's going to be some Robinson Starman on there. It's a drastically different take on a superhero comic. It's Jack Knight, the son of the original Starman, the Golden Age Starman. We saw him a little while in the Stars and Stripe episode, and he's kind of a reluctant hero, but he still wants to do right by the the title, by the mantle. And his regular life gets in the way. He has his whole thing is that he's a collector. He runs a junk store, is what they call it, and like they'll show pictures of his junk store during the story, and you can get lost in these pictures. It's Tony Harris, I believe, is the artist on it. I'm like 80% sure it's Tony Harris. The art is really wonderful. It fits the tone of the story. When you get a look at these junk store pictures, it's like you could find things that you have in your own house if you're a collector of things. And I tell people that I'm a collector of collections. I collect so much crap, you know. Where if I look at these images in the Starman book, like he has like a Laurel and Hardy a poster on the wall for sale, and it's like, I would take that, you know. He's got like a suit of armor or something, just weird stuff that I think people, comics collectors, comics fans, comics enthusiasts would be tickled by. And his whole characterization is wonderful. It's a very, I don't want to say it's a moody book, but the book has a mood. It's kind of tinted darker, but not in a Max or Vertigo sort of way. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think if folks haven't read it, I don't know what is on the DC app in as far, or even if there is a DC app anymore, in as far as like free books or like Marvel Unlimited style books here. But if you haven't read Starman, read Starman. You will thank me. You will be very, very happy that you did so. And you might be mad because he's not around anymore. But it was really, really good stuff. And I discovered it too late. I discovered it when it was already out in trade collections, and I remember devouring these things. I blew like an entire paycheck when I had way too much money for a dumb kid, and I blew a whole paycheck on like the first 8 of them at once, and I just went through them in just a matter of days. It's a wonderful series, and I'm hoping that it lives up to everything that I'm saying, because I haven't read it in a little while, but I do remember loving it very, very much, and I think a lot of folks will as well.
Very cool. Yeah, actually, the entire month of November is Chris Sheehan month on Source Material Live. We've got really? Starman, yeah. Then we have Doom Patrol crawling from the wreckage.
Oh, yeah.
Then whatever you're picking for the 23rd, and then the Jeffrey Dahmer book.
We have Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah. Now, for the other book, would you prefer a Marvel, a DC? Do you have any kind of preference to make give me an idea?
I feel like we're doing 2 DCs in a row after this.
It's true.
So yeah, give me a Marvel.
Okay, absolutely. I can do that. I'm looking right now, and yeah, I'll find something good.
All right.
Or maybe something really bad. You ever hear of Marville?
What?
You ever hear of Marville?
What's Marville?
Oh boy. Okay, I think I know what we're doing. Me and Reggie did Trouble on the Cosmic Treadmill, so I don't want to do that one again. Marville is back around the turn of the century. The Marvel editor-in-chief was a guy named Bob Harris, and he oversaw the 90s. He was big on he was originally the X-Men editor. Then, since the X-Men just blew up, he was made editor-in-chief. Then the bubble burst. Marvel went through bankruptcy, but he still maintained his position. Then the X-Men movie comes out, and Chris Claremont comes back to the X-Men books, and everybody's rejoicing. It's like, oh, it's a new golden age. Everything's gonna be great. TV Guide has an X-Men sample story in it, and it's a new story written by Chris Claremont, and it's a story that made absolutely no sense. And because it was just Claremont was doing this thing where he was trying to shed his image of what came before and trying to do new things, not realizing that when a creator comes back to a book, we want the honeymoon period, right? We want them to play the hits for a few days. We want to hear the familiar songs and then do new stuff, then do your new stuff. Claremont was like, screw that. I'm gonna introduce a group of people called the Neo that you're not gonna give a shit about, but I'm gonna tell you they're important, and I'm not gonna tell you why they're important. And people didn't care. So he writes this story for TV Guide, and it's hard to really emphasize how how huge the circulation was on TV Guide. Almost every house in this country had TV Guide in it, right? You'd see it on the counters at the grocery store. You'd have subscriptions to it. It was, I think, even today. No, I think Reader's Digest is now, but I think for the longest time it was the top circulating periodical in the country. So to have this opportunity after the bubble burst to have X-Men comics in almost every house in the country, it's a huge deal, and it's a huge opportunity, and they blew it. So Bob Harris oversaw that, was like, okay, we're going to show you the door now. So he was gone. That's the rumor anyway. They bring in Joe Quesada, who was overseeing the Marvel Knights imprint, and a fellow by the name of Bill Jemas, who was kind of a prick. But it was a very exciting time for Marvel fans because they were doing a lot of interesting things. And one of the things they did was something called You Decide. This was in 2002. There's actually an episode all about You Decide on Weird Comics History somewhere in the archives of the Cosmic Treadmill channel. It was a bet between Joe Quesada, Bill Jemas, and Peter David, the writer of... He was writing Captain Marvel at the time, and this was the Genis Vell Captain Marvel, the son of the original Marvel, not Carol Danvers. And they had a bet as to who could sell more books. And Peter David, his whole gimmick was he's going to write a good story. Joe Quesada's whole gimmick was that he was going to do an Ultimate book because the Ultimate line was on fire. So he brought in a guy, and they did this new Ultimate book called Ultimate Adventures, which was basically a ripoff of Batman and Robin. Bill Jemas, the third guy, he was just going to throw shit at the wall. And he came up with a book called Marville. And every cover had like a half-naked woman on it. And it was basically Bill Jemas's... It was basically, the whole... the Family Guy thing with the, what grinds my gears?
Mm-hmm.
It was basically Bill Jemas saying, hey, you know what grinds my gears? And it was him making fun of DC Comics. The whole premise of Marville, it was the first cover of it is a ripoff of the first Smallville poster. Remember the show Smallville?
Yeah.
And like that poster where like young Clark Kent is like kind of like he's like almost like in a Jesus pose a little bit, like he's like leaning up against something and he's got the S on his chest like painted on there. The cover was like that, except it had like a $sign on his chest. And the whole thing, because they were making fun of DC big time for being owned by America Online. So, like, the star of Marville, at least the first issue, was Kal AOL instead of Kal-El. And so it's just riffing on DC being AOL Comics. And It's Bill Jemis, he hated Republicans, so there's a lot of like Rush Limbaugh bashing in there. It's basically Bill Jemis saying, you know what grinds my gears, and then running off at the mouth and putting it in a comic book that people, stupid people like myself, paid money for. And it ran 6 issues with a 7th issue that reintroduced the Marvel Epic Comics imprint. You remember Epic Comics?
No, not really.
Okay, in the early '80s, Jim Shooter wanted to have it so he could lure creators to Marvel, and Epic was a creator-owned imprint. Things like ElfQuest are there. You know, the Keenies, they did ElfQuest through Epic. They maintained the rights to ElfQuest, but Marvel published it. Gru the Wanderer was another.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah, where Sergio Aragonis, he maintains the rights to Gru, but Marvel published it. Rumor has it that Jim Shooter launched this whole Epic imprint as a way to get Frank Miller to do Ronin at Marvel. But Frank Miller didn't trust Jim Shooter, and he went to DC anyway. So Epic was a thing for, say, like 1980, because it was a magazine first. It was an Epic anthology, and then it went into the individual books. So it spanned the entirety of the 80s and went into the 90s. Then it went away. Bill Jemis thought, hey, if we can get people who want to write comics for us, why not? So the entire 7th issue of Marvel is an application to write for Marvel Comics.
Oh, Jesus
the
Christ.
entire damn thing. 22 pages of, this is what we're looking for. This is what you'll keep. This is what you need to do. You need to find an artist, a penciler, an inker. It was just so batshit insane that this is something that they sold for actual American dollars. So, maybe we'll do Marvel in a few weeks. That's my long way, my scenic route of saying, hey, let's do Marvel.
Let's see if I can find it on my pirate site.
Oh, you mean at the library?
Yeah. All right. MAR, one word.
Dille.
Yeah, 7 issues.
There it is.
All right, this
And
is
you
what we're
see
doing.
the first cover here, looking like the Smallville cover. Oh, and it's actually not a $, it's an M.
Yeah, I see it now.
It is batshit.
All right, so we're doing Marvel. Sounds good.
Wonderful.
All right, go ahead and do your plugs.
You could find words from me at chrisisoninfiniteearths.com and talking from me at chrisandreggie.podbean.com. I recently put up something I've been holding on to for the better part of 2 years now. It was an episode that Reggie and I did for the Weird Science show. It was we used to cover the Sandman Universe books, and then we talked about that a little bit during the Lucifer discussion a few weeks back. And so we did all those books, and I was compiling them after the fact and putting them out as sort of like anthology episodes. So for Halloween, I put out the 7th episode of the Sandman Universe Gatherum with links to the first 6 episodes because it's kind of hard to find them deep in the archives. But if anybody wants to hear Reggie's voice again, it's there. And if you want to hear some current year Vertigo, or not Vertigo, just DC, I guess now, DC conversation, it's right there for you. So there's that. Of course, there's X-Lapsed, there's Major X-Lapsed, and a lot of stuff cooking. So keep your ears tuned, I suppose.
All right, last week we did the Death of Hawkman. We reviewed Hell in the Cell, The Witches, Danzig Sings Elvis, The Craft Legacy, and NXT Halloween Havoc. Those are all
Did
in the
Danzig do
archives.
Blue Christmas?
No, I would have loved that though.
Lame.
Tomorrow during the day is Election Day here in the United States, and it has become the 4-year tradition that whenever there is a presidential election, myself, Robert Winfrey, and Andrew Graham from our Canadian office get together and we do a live election podcast. So we will watch as the returns come in, and we will fill out our maps and tell you what we think as things are happening. You know, we're 3 guys who like to follow sort of the sport of politics, but don't necessarily have a dog in the hunt.
In the fight.
Yeah. I voted. I'm not going to talk about who I voted for, but I voted. But if my person doesn't win, I don't get upset about that sort of thing. That's how elections work. So
that might be the longest episode you ever do if they don't declare a winner until Christmas.
I have a PET scan the day after. We're cutting it at 4 hours.
There you go.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us on Source Material Live. For Mr. Sheehan, I'm Mark. Be well, be safe, and behave. See ya.